Hi everyone, my name is Samina, and I have a crazy mother. She was so afraid of disappointing her father that she tried to control herself, my life, and all my close relatives. Do you know the situation? If so, please like the video and write "toxic" in the comments, and I'll know that we're on the same page. Well, in the meantime, I want to share with you a story of my life, and most importantly, how I got out of it. Anyway, my mom had a hard childhood. My mom's mother died early and she had to raise her siblings, as she was the oldest child. She had to leave school early and raise the children while my grandfather, her father, worked. It was worth it. 9 years later, my grandfather got rich, and the first thing he did was marry my mother off to one of his investors. I never wondered if my mother wanted it, but she married a stranger, had me, and then she couldn't have any more children. Eventually, all of our relatives continued my grandfather's business a little at a time and started their own businesses. But my mother continued to control who spent how much money on cars or education. So one day, she and I went to visit my aunt, my grandfather's youngest daughter, Bibi. She was awesome, always gave me gifts, could listen to me and hug me, and I knew she loved me. When we entered her house, the cleaning lady was finishing mopping the floors. Mom looked at the maid with a displeased look, then took a rag from her and said, "You don't wash well. Get out of here." The woman was shocked. "But I've almost cleaned everything, mistress. Let me finish it," she pleaded. But my mother was adamant. She kicked the bucket and said, "Get out. You won't get a single rupee, okay?" The woman ran away crying, and then Bibi came down. "What is going on here?" "Wastefulness. That's what's going on here." "What do you mean, sister?" "What do you mean? You have hands and feet and water. Oh gods, you can mop the floors yourself. But instead of saving money, you'd rather pay another woman to do your work." "Sister, please don't swear. I can afford it. My husband makes good money and I work myself. I don't have time to do household chores, so I hire people." "I'd rather have a baby than work." Oh, here we go. My mom had very old-fashioned stereotypes about women. She used to say that we were born to carry on the family and make the house cozy, so all those who worked were criticized. It was useless to argue because my grandfather thought the same way. And in our house, I did all the dirty work. My mother didn't know how to talk quietly or calmly. She almost always yelled. From the stress of life, her eyebrows were always furrowed. And if someone laughed nearby, she'd yell at them, saying it was unseemly to behave that way, and what people would say. That's why I adored Bibi. She had a different outlook on the world. She wore jeans instead of long dresses, worked, met clients, and didn't cover her head like the rest of my family. She only wore a headscarf when she came to visit us, or her grandfather. And then one day, when I came back from school, my mother sat me across from her and gave me shocking news that almost made me faint. "You are getting married. Grandpa found you a groom." "What? A fiancé? Mom, I'm only 13 years old. I don't want to get married." "It's too late for that." "But I have school." "School can wait. You will take a leave of absence until you give birth, and then you may not want to study anymore." "No, Mom, you don't understand. I want to study. What will I give birth to? If I'm a girl, don't I have the right to an education?" "You sound just like Bibi. That's enough. Grandpa decided so. I won't disobey him." "But it's my life." After saying that, my mother slapped me across the face. "Don't even think about going against my words. You will be an obedient child and do as my father and I say. Is that clear?" I cried and ran outside. I couldn't change my mother's mind, and neither could I change my 99-year-old grandfather's mind. The very next day, my mother brought a dressmaker into the house to take the measurements for my wedding dress. I was told that I'd see the groom at the wedding as part of tradition. I asked my mother to at least show me a picture, but she wouldn't agree. Again, she furrowed her brows and began to aggravate me. In the evening, Bibi came to our house. She had heard the news about my upcoming wedding and was genuinely sorry for me. My aunt said that she had hardly managed to marry the man she loved, but her father had also been trying to marry Bibi off as soon as she was 15. Isn't that awful? On the day of my wedding, everything was ready. Grandpa kissed my forehead and patted my shoulder. He smelled like an old man. My mother stood over me the whole time and made sure I didn't slip anything in Grandpa's face. They put my dress on and left me to put on my makeup and do my hair. I stayed in the room and cried while they painted me. The makeup artist couldn't calm me down. The mascara was spreading all over my cheeks. And then Bibi came in with a bag in her hands, and there was something white in it. "I'll put it on myself. You can go now," she said to the girl, and she left. "I want to help you. Listen carefully to what needs to be done." I listened to her, and her plan was crazy. "What? I can't. You know my mom will eat me up. She's crazy." "But it'll work, for sure." "What's going to happen to Grandpa?" Okay, I see you have arguments. I'll show you your husband." One picture was enough to convince me. He was 17 years older than my mother. Now I could see why Bibi came up with a plan like that instead of a platitude like running away. Because if I had run away, they would have brought me back and married me anyway, blaming my escape on my youth and stupidity. I went out to the guests. We were to be betrothed before God. The rite is called nikah. If you didn't know, weddings in our country are celebrated over several days. It's a complicated process, and everything has to be prepared at the highest level. First, there is a day for only the bride and groom's relatives to meet, then another day for the engagement. There is the bride's price and all that sort of thing. And then comes the day of the wedding ceremony itself. I didn't see the groom at the nikah because the parties decided to engage us on the same day. Now I understand why, so that I wouldn't run away at the sight of my husband. They made me a red dress embroidered with gold, but I showed up in front of the guests in white, in mourning. Can you imagine? This was done on purpose, not just to get away from the wedding, but to leave a bad impression. Almost the same thing my aunt did once. The groom almost had a stroke, as did my grandfather. But I knew my grandfather would pull through because his heart was strong. My fiancé was shocked at the sight of me. His jaw dropped and he rubbed his eyes 20 times. Instead of meekly and humbly waiting for him, I took selfies and recorded videos on my phone. My mom was taken away by relatives because she said she couldn't stand the shame. She wanted to jump me. There was indignation in the crowd. The old people were cursing, and everyone was asking who I was to behave like this. But I smiled, bowed, and said, "We live in a modern world where everyone has a choice. I am a human being. Moreover, I am a teenager, and I have every right to choose, just like you do. This man is older than my mother, old enough to be my father, and do you think I could marry him? This day will not be remembered as the happiest day of my life, but as the funeral of my life. If you wish your daughters the same fate, come forward and tell me I'm wrong," I said. Grandpa got up from his chair and said, "You embarrassed me and the whole family. From now on, I officially disown you. This man is more than worthy. You will be sorry you behaved in such a humiliating way." Bibi stood up for me. She said she was the only one in the family who married for love, but what was it worth? Turns out my mother disowned her the same way, didn't communicate for years, and threatened that Bibi would never marry. How did you manage to make things work out? I got pregnant before the wedding. There was oohing and screaming in the audience. It felt like my aunt had committed a world-class crime. My niece and my aunt's husband came running into the hall. They were happy, they loved each other, and it was mutual. The crowd was outraged. I was embarrassed. I agree, I may have taken too drastic measures, but there was no other choice. As with me, so was I with them. My protest was still long remembered by the people, talked about and whispered behind my back. I knew it went against the grain of the family, but you had to start breaking stereotypes, right? What happened next? My family kept their word. My mom kicked me out of the house the same day. I stayed with my aunt for a while, and then I met people with a similar mindset and began to study, work, and learn constitutional rights for women and girls on an international level. After 10 years, I managed to implement dozens of projects to support survivors of family oppression. I opened a crisis center called Viber and started to help people like me. Politicians from many countries learned about my work. We began to cooperate and promote the ideology of choice, personal and educational rights, and women's work. Why am I telling you all this? Remember that there is a way out and there's always a choice. It is up to you, and only you can decide how to live, who to connect your life with, where to work, and who to be friends with. Or am I wrong? What is your opinion on the subject? Tell me, guys, did you like my story? Write your opinion about it in the comments below the video. Don't forget to like it, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.